The world has a cruel way of breaking you, not with loud cracks, but with silent fractures that no one can see. My name is Elena Hart, and this is the story of how love, pure, trusting, unconditional love, turned into my greatest mistake. And my greatest weapon. It started like any other morning. The coffee was brewing, sunlight spilled through the white curtains of our suburban home in Connecticut, and I was humming softly while preparing breakfast. My husband Daniel was still upstairs, probably getting ready for another early meeting. I used to think those meetings were a sign of his hard work, his ambition. Now looking back, I realized they were the earliest signs of my downfall. Daniel and I had been married for 7 years. We had built a life together from scratch, our dream house, our small but growing marketing firm, and what I thought was a bond that could withstand anything. He was charming, witty, and the kind of man who could convince you the stars themselves revolved around him. I loved him more than I ever loved myself, and that was my first mistake. That morning, my phone buzzed. A message from Chloe, my best friend since college. She was the kind of woman who lit up every room she entered, bold, spontaneous, and dangerously beautiful. She had been through several relationships, never really finding the one. I used to joke that she'd never settle down, that she was too free for commitment. I didn't know then that she'd find her forever in the arms of my husband. Her message was short. "Hey babe, brunch this Saturday. Need to vent about someone new," I smiled. "Typical Chloe, always chasing someone new," I replied instantly. "Of course. Same place, same time. You know I'm always here," and I meant it. I was always there, for her, for Daniel, for everyone. But no one was ever there for me. Later that evening, Daniel came home later than usual. His tie was loosened, his hair slightly messed up, that signature cologne of his lingering in the air like temptation itself. "Long day?" I asked softly. He smiled, tired but warm. "Yeah, baby. You know how clients are, demanding as hell. I swear they think I'm Superman," I laughed, playing along. I didn't notice the faint lipstick stain on his collar until he leaned in to kiss my forehead. For a brief second, my heart froze. Pink. A soft, peach shade I'd seen before. Chloe's favorite. I told myself it was nothing. A trick of the light. Maybe a client's friendly hug. My mind refused to believe what my gut was screaming. Because when you love someone too deeply, you don't see the truth. You defend the lie. The following Saturday, Chloe and I met for brunch. She looked radiant, glowing even. Her eyes sparkled. Her smile was wider than usual. "Elena, you won't believe it," she said, excitement bubbling in her voice. "I met someone. He's different, mature, kind, confident." I smiled, stirring my coffee. "That's great, Chloe. What's his name?" She hesitated. Just a flicker. So small that anyone else would have missed it. But not me. "Daniel," she said softly, and for a moment I couldn't breathe. I laughed, too quickly, too forced. "Daniel? Wow, what a coincidence." "Yeah," she giggled. "But don't worry, not your Daniel, obviously." "Obviously." I nodded, but something inside me cracked. The way she avoided my eyes, the nervous laugh, my intuition screamed at me. The dots connected themselves. His late meetings. Her sudden glow. The lipstick. I left the brunch early, making up an excuse about feeling unwell. My hands trembled the whole drive home. I didn't cry, not yet. Not then. That night, I waited for him to come home. When he did, I watched him from across the kitchen table as he talked about his day. Every lie rolled off his tongue so easily, so smoothly. I almost admired his skill. When he kissed me goodnight, I turned away. He didn't notice. He never noticed anything about me anymore. Over the next few days, I gathered evidence, not because I needed proof for the world, but because I needed to kill my hope. I checked his messages when he slept. I followed him once, quietly, when he said he had a conference call. He wasn't going to a meeting. He was going to her. I parked a block away and watched from the shadows as he entered Chloe's apartment building, carrying a bouquet of lilies, my favorite flowers. The betrayal wasn't loud or dramatic. It was slow, quiet, suffocating. I didn't confront him. Not that night. Not the next. Instead, I planned. The human heart is a fragile thing, but once broken, it becomes sharper than glass. I began to play my role more perfectly than ever before. I smiled more, cooked his favorite meals, laughed at his jokes. If he suspected anything, he didn't show it. Chloe, too, seemed relaxed around me again. She believed I was blind, but I was watching everything. Recording everything. You see, Daniel had one weakness: his career. He prided himself on his image as a loyal husband and visionary CEO. His company's investors adored that clean, devoted man image, the one I helped him build, and that's how I decided I'd destroy him, not with anger, but with exposure. One evening as he showered, I took his phone again. This time, I didn't just read. I downloaded every message, every photo, every recording, their secret videos, their whispered promises, their plans to leave me when the time is right. I smiled as the files transferred to my drive. When he came out, towel draped over his shoulders, he saw me sitting on the bed. "You okay?" he asked. I looked up, smiled faintly. "Of course, love. Just tired." He kissed my forehead and said, "You're my everything. Elena." My heart didn't even flinch, because the woman he betrayed, the one who once loved him blindly, was gone. For weeks, I prepared my revenge quietly. Every document, every recording carefully placed where it would hurt the most: his company server, his personal email, even a few anonymous tips sent to the investors. But that wasn't enough. I wanted him to feel what I felt: humiliation, isolation, regret, and the perfect moment came one evening at a charity gala. The same event where he planned to announce a new partnership, one that would make him millions. Chloe would be there too, of course. She was always by his side lately, helping with PR. I wore a black gown, sleek and silent, like a storm before it breaks. I greeted people, smiled for photos, sipped champagne. Daniel was in his element, laughing, charming, shining, until the big screen behind him flickered and their private messages began to play. The crowd gasped. Chloe froze. Daniel turned pale. His world collapsed in front of hundreds. I stood there, calm, watching his carefully built empire burn. When his eyes met mine across the room, he knew. He whispered my name once. Elena. But I turned away, walking out as the world whispered behind me. Outside, under the cold night sky, I finally breathed. I wasn't the broken woman anymore. I was the storm that followed betrayal. And this was just the beginning. They say revenge feels sweet, but no one talks about the emptiness that follows. The night after the gala, I sat alone in my car, the sound of rain tapping softly on the windshield. I had done it. I had shattered Daniel's world the way he shattered mine. And yet, I felt nothing. No joy, no relief, just silence. The world outside was quiet, but inside my mind, chaos. Every memory replayed like a cruel montage. Our wedding day, his promises, the way he once held me as if I was his only reason to breathe. I had loved him so deeply that his betrayal felt like a slow poison spreading through my soul. And now, even with his reputation in ruins, I couldn't tell if I had won or just lost everything that made me human. The next morning, my phone exploded with notifications. Messages from friends, co-workers, even reporters. "Elena, is it true? Oh my God, I saw the video. You're trending everywhere." I didn't open them. I couldn't. Instead, I made myself tea and sat by the window, watching the clouds roll in. A stormy morning for a stormy heart. That's when I heard the knock on my door. 3 slow knocks, heavy, hesitant. I knew who it was before I even opened it. Daniel. He stood there, drenched from the rain, eyes hollow and bloodshot. His suit was wrinkled, his tie missing. He looked like a man who'd lost everything, and he had. "Elena," he said softly. His voice cracked on my name. "Please, we need to talk." I stared at him for a long moment. The man who once stood tall, proud, untouchable, now looked like a shadow of himself. "There's nothing left to say, Daniel," I said, my tone cold, calm. "You said everything when you chose her." He shook his head, stepping closer. "It wasn't like that. I didn't mean for it to happen. You have to believe me," I almost laughed. "Didn't mean for it to happen?" The same line every cheater rehearses like a bad script. "You lied to me for months," I said sharply. "You made me feel crazy for suspecting you. You kissed me with her lipstick still on your collar. You made me believe I wasn't enough." "Elena, I was stupid," he whispered. I thought I wanted excitement, something new. But I see it now, you were everything. You are everything. I took a step back, crossing my arms. And when exactly did you realize that? Before or after your investors dropped you? Before or after your perfect little image went up in flames? He flinched. The truth hit harder than any slap could. Please, he said again, voice trembling. I've lost everything. Don't take yourself away too. I looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, Daniel, you already did that. And then I closed the door. The weeks that followed were strangely peaceful. I focused on myself for the first time in years, painting, reading, long walks by the lake. People stared when they recognized me, whispered about the scandal. But I didn't care. Daniel's company filed for bankruptcy. Investors pulled out, Chloe disappeared from public view, and the gossip networks fed on their downfall like vultures. I thought that would be enough. But healing isn't a straight line, it's a spiral. You think you're fine until something pulls you back. For me, that something was Chloe. One afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered, Elena. It was her voice. Soft, broken, I froze. What do you want, Chloe? I need to see you. Please, it's not what you think. I laughed bitterly. Oh, it's exactly what I think. You slept with my husband, you lied to my face, and now you want what, absolution? She sighed shakily. Just meet me. One last time. I need to tell you something important. I should have hung up. I should have ignored her. But curiosity, cruel, relentless curiosity, won. We met at a small cafe downtown. The same place where we used to spend hours talking about dreams, heartbreaks, and future plans. Funny how life circles back to the same places, only the meanings change. Chloe looked different, tired, pale, her usual sparkle gone. She couldn't meet my eyes. You look awful, I said bluntly, sitting across from her. I deserve that, she murmured. Probably worse. You do, I agreed coldly. So why am I here? She swallowed hard. Daniel used me, Elena. He told me things. Made me believe you didn't love him anymore. Said your marriage was falling apart, that you wanted out. I swear, I didn't mean to hurt you. I stared at her, unblinking. And you believed him? You, my best friend? The woman who stood beside me at my wedding? Tears welled in her eyes. I was stupid. I fell for his charm like you once did. But when the truth came out, he turned on me too. He said it was all my fault, that I pushed him to cheat. He ruined my reputation. I lost everything, Elena. My job, my friends, my peace. For a moment, I almost felt pity. Almost. Welcome to the club, I said quietly. She shook her head. No, you don't understand. He's trying to rebuild, behind your back. He's planning to start over in California, new investors, new company name. And he's blaming you publicly, saying you had a mental breakdown, that you fabricated everything out of jealousy. My blood went cold. What? He's painting himself as the victim, Chloe said, her voice trembling. He's telling everyone you were unstable, obsessed, that you hacked his accounts. He's playing the long game, Elena. I leaned back in my chair, heart pounding. The audacity of it. The sheer nerve of that man. Even after everything, after losing everything, he still dared to twist the truth. That night, I couldn't sleep. His words echoed in my mind, the betrayal replaying again and again. But this time I wasn't the same woman. I wasn't the quiet, trusting wife anymore. If he wanted war, he'd get it. I pulled out my laptop and opened a folder labeled Phoenix. It was a collection of everything I hadn't released. Financial documents, offshore accounts, proof of embezzlement. He thought he was clever hiding his money after the scandal. But I knew every password, every secret. He forgot who helped him build it all. This time, I wasn't going to destroy just his image, I was going to destroy his legacy. Over the next few days, I worked in silence. The press had started shifting sympathy toward Daniel. Classic media manipulation. Poor betrayed husband. Unstable wife. The perfect narrative, but they'd forgotten one thing. Truth is the most dangerous weapon of all. And I held it. I reached out to a journalist who owed me a favor, a woman named Mara Jenkins, known for exposing corporate corruption. Mara, I said when she answered, how would you like the biggest story of your career? She laughed softly. Elena Hart, I was wondering when I'd hear from you again. What do you have for me? Everything, I said simply. Names, accounts, offshore transfers. Proof that Daniel Hart has been laundering investor money for years. The line went silent for a moment. "Elena, are you sure about this?" she finally asked. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. I've never been more sure of anything. 3 weeks later, the headlines exploded again. Disgraced CEO Daniel Hart under federal investigation for financial crimes. Sources confirm evidence leaked by anonymous whistleblower. Daniel's empire, his rebirth, ended before it began. This time, there would be no comeback. I stood by the same window, watching the sunrise paint the sky gold and pink. For the first time in a long while, I felt peace, but deep down, a quiet ache still lingered. Revenge had given me closure, but not healing, because healing doesn't come from watching someone burn. It comes from walking away from the fire, and I wasn't sure I was ready to walk away just yet. It had been 6 months since Daniel's final fall. His empire was gone, his name buried under scandal, and I was finally learning to breathe again. I had moved to a smaller apartment on the outskirts of the city, far from the glass towers that once reminded me of him. My days were quieter now, mornings with black coffee and a book, afternoons painting in the soft light of my balcony, and nights where silence didn't feel so heavy anymore. People said time heals. They were half right. Time doesn't heal. It teaches you how to live with the scars. One rainy afternoon, I was walking home from the art gallery where I'd recently started working. The city lights reflected off the wet streets, blurring like watercolors. I stopped by a bookstore, drawn by the familiar comfort of paper and ink. And that's when I heard his voice. "Elena." It was soft, uncertain, like a ghost speaking after years of silence. I froze. For a second, I thought my mind was playing tricks on me. But when I turned, there he was, Daniel. He looked different, thinner, older, worn out. His once perfect hair was streaked with gray, his clothes plain. The arrogance that once lived in his posture was gone. All that was left was a man carrying the weight of his own ruin. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice sharper than I intended. He looked at me with tired eyes. "I didn't know where else to go." "You could have gone anywhere but here." He exhaled slowly, his breath trembling. "I came to say I'm sorry. Not the kind of sorry people say to make themselves feel better. The kind that comes when you realize you've destroyed everything good that ever touched your life." I didn't respond. I just stared, searching for the manipulation that used to hide behind his words. But for the first time, there was none. "I lost everything," he continued quietly. "My company, my friends, my reputation. But the thing that hurt most wasn't losing them. It was realizing how empty it all was without you." I laughed bitterly. "You realize that after you ruined my life, after you lied, after you dragged my name through the mud?" He nodded, accepting every word. "I deserve worse. Yes, you do." We stood in silence as the rain fell harder outside. For a fleeting second, I saw the man I once loved. Not the cheater, not the liar, but the broken boy who'd once held my hand and promised forever. And maybe that's what scared me most, that a part of me still recognized him. "Why are you really here, Daniel?" I finally asked. "To give you this." He reached into his coat pocket and handed me a small envelope. I hesitated before taking it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a legal document transferring the ownership of our old lake house to my name. "It was always your place," he said softly. "You built it. You designed it. I don't deserve it." I looked up, shocked. "Why now?" "Because it's the only good thing I can still give you," he whispered. "And maybe it's my way of letting go." Before I could reply, he turned and walked away. Just like that, he was gone again. That night, I sat by the window, staring at the deed in my hand. The lake house, our first home. The place where we painted the walls ourselves, where we danced barefoot in the living room, where he'd first told me he loved me. So many memories. Good and bad. Was this his redemption? A final apology? Part of me wanted to burn the paper. Another part wanted to see the house again, to face the ghosts that still lingered there. In the end, curiosity won. The next weekend, I drove out to the countryside. The house stood by the lake, weathered but still beautiful. The paint had faded, the garden overgrown, but it was ours, or rather mine now. As I stepped inside, a wave of nostalgia hit me. The scent of pine, the faint echo of laughter in the walls. I ran my fingers along the piano we once played together. Dust coated everything, but the memories were untouched. I walked to the window where we used to sit every evening, watching the sun set over the lake. And as I stood there, tears finally fell, not out of anger this time, but release. I had been carrying the weight of betrayal for so long that I forgot what it felt like to forgive. Not him. At least, not yet, but myself, for loving him, for believing him, for breaking because of him. That night, as I sat on the porch, I heard a car pull up. My heart sank. It couldn't be, but it was. Daniel again. He stepped out slowly, holding a small wooden box. "I didn't think you'd come here," he said. "I didn't think you'd follow me," I replied coldly. He smiled sadly. "Old habits die hard." He walked closer and handed me the box. "These were yours. I kept them all this time." Inside were photographs, letters, tiny keepsakes from our years together. The note I had written him on our first anniversary, the pressed flower from our wedding bouquet, even the painting we'd made together on a drunken summer night. I felt my chest tighten. "Why would you keep these?" "Because even when I lost everything," he said softly, "I couldn't let go of the moments when I still knew who I was." For the first time, I saw genuine remorse in his eyes. Not the kind that seeks forgiveness, but the kind born from deep, endless regret. I didn't say anything. I just closed the box and placed it on the table beside me. "Daniel," I said quietly, "you can't keep coming back hoping to fix what's already dead." He nodded slowly. "I know, I just wanted you to know that I never stopped loving you, even when I was too blind to see what that meant." He turned to leave again, but this time I stopped him. "Daniel." He looked back, eyes heavy with sorrow. "Love isn't what you say when it's convenient," I said, voice steady. "It's what you choose when everything else falls apart. You chose yourself. I'm choosing peace." And with that, I walked back inside, closing the door one final time. The next morning, I woke to sunlight spilling through the curtains. The lake shimmered like glass. I felt light, empty, but in a good way. Like I had finally set something down after carrying it for too long. I made coffee, sat on the porch, and for the first time in years, smiled without pain. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "He's gone. Daniel Hart, car accident on Route 9 last night, instant." My hand trembled. The cup slipped from my fingers and shattered on the floor. The world went silent. I didn't know what to feel. Relief? Sadness? Shock? Maybe all of it at once. I went back inside, sat on the couch, and stared at the box he'd given me. Slowly, I opened it again, running my fingers over the photograph of us laughing by the lake. Tears fell, soft and quiet. Not because I still loved him, but because love like that, broken, painful, unforgettable, leaves echoes that never fully fade. That night, I wrote him one last letter. I didn't know who I was writing it to, the man I loved or the ghost of who he'd become. "Daniel, you hurt me more than anyone ever could. But you also taught me who I really am. I hope wherever you are now, you've found the peace you were always chasing. I forgive you. And I forgive myself." Ellen and I folded the letter, placed it inside the box, and threw it into the lake. The ripples spread across the water, catching the moonlight like silver veins, and for the first time in years, I finally felt free. The morning after I let go of Daniel's memories into the lake, the air felt different, softer. Still, but not heavy. I sat outside with a blanket around my shoulders, watching the mist curl above the water. For the first time, I truly believed I was free, but peace, I would soon learn, is never permanent. By afternoon, I drove back to the city. Life had to move forward. I had a small art exhibition coming up, my first solo one. My paintings had always carried the weight of my pain, but now I wanted them to speak of healing, of finding beauty in brokenness. As I unpacked my brushes in the gallery, my phone buzzed again. A call from an unknown number. "Elena Hart?" A calm male voice asked. "Yes, this is she. This is attorney Samuel Reeves. I represented Daniel Hart in his final estate matters." "I'm sorry for your loss," I froze. "Yes, thank you. There's a matter Daniel instructed me to discuss with you if you're available." I hesitated, unsure if I wanted any more pieces of him in my life. What kind of matter? A letter and a video message. He left them for you. He requested they be given to you personally after his passing. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. A video, a letter, what else could he possibly have to say? I almost said no. But curiosity, or maybe the part of me that still needed closure, made me agree. I'll come by tomorrow, I said quietly. The next morning, I sat in Samuel Reeves's office, a minimalist space with dark wood and soft jazz playing faintly in the background. He handed me a sealed envelope and a flash drive. He recorded this a few days before his accident, the lawyer said. He was very specific about delivering it to you personally. I nodded slowly. My hands trembled as I held the envelope. Back home, I sat on the couch, staring at the drive on my coffee table. I must have sat there for an hour before I finally plugged it into my laptop. The screen flickered, and there he was, Daniel. He looked frail, but his eyes, they were different this time, clear, sincere. Hey, he began softly. If you're watching this, it means I didn't make it. He gave a small, sad smile. I know you probably don't want to hear from me again, but there's something you need to know before you decide how to remember me. I leaned forward, heart pounding. I didn't just destroy your trust, he said. I destroyed my own life in ways you never saw. The lies, the affairs, the deals, they weren't just greed. They were desperation. My father's company. It wasn't mine to begin with. It was yours. I blinked, confused. He continued. You remember when we were first married and I told you my father left me the business? That wasn't true. Your designs, your architecture firm, you had more ownership in it than I ever admitted. When my father died, the only reason the company survived was you. Your designs rebuilt our image, brought investors, gave us life again. But I couldn't stand the idea that you were the reason behind our success, his voice cracked. So I buried your name, took your credit, lied to everyone, and to you. I told myself it was to protect you from the corporate world, but truthfully, it was pride. I felt a deep chill run through me. He looked down for a moment, then back at the camera. That lake house wasn't just our home, it was your masterpiece. Every design, every detail. I bought it for you, but it was built by you. And I couldn't live with that. So I made you believe it was a gift. When it was really something I stole from you. Tears burned in my eyes. He sighed deeply. When I lost everything, I realized the cruelest thing I ever did wasn't betrayal. It was silencing your brilliance. You could have been a world-renowned architect by now. I took that from you because I couldn't handle being the smaller name in our story. He paused. His expression softened. I didn't record this to ask for forgiveness, Elena. I just wanted to tell you the truth before I disappeared from your life forever. You deserve to know that you were always the real reason behind everything we built. A small smile appeared on his face. There's one last thing. Look inside the envelope. I left you something there. The screen went black. With shaking hands, I tore open the envelope. Inside was a second letter and a key, small, golden, with a tiny inscription, for what's truly yours. The letter read, There's a storage unit downtown. Locker 27B. Inside you'll find sketches, contracts, and prototypes, all yours. I kept them hidden for years, convincing myself I'd release them when I was ready. But I never was. Maybe now you can finally have what was always meant for you. I don't expect forgiveness. I just hope that someday when you build again, you'll know that it was never me who made you great. It was you, always you. Daniel Bye. The time I finished reading, tears were streaming down my cheeks. Not just for the pain he caused, but for the years I had doubted myself, believing I was nothing without him. The next day, I went to the storage facility. The clerk led me to locker 27B. Inside were boxes stacked neatly, each labeled in Daniel's handwriting. When I opened the first one, I gasped. Blueprints, dozens of them. Designs with my signature still faintly visible under his. The edges were smudged but unmistakable. The second box held project contracts, all under Hart Enterprises, but attached notes showed my original proposals. Every piece of evidence that proved what he said was true. I ran my hand over one of the sketches, tracing the faint pencil lines I remembered drawing late at night years ago. He had kept them all. For a long time, I just stood there, between grief and gratitude, pain and pride. It was like rediscovering a version of myself that I had buried along with our marriage. Over the next few weeks, I went through everything, documenting, archiving, rebuilding. With the help of a few contacts from my gallery, I started preparing a new collection, The Forgotten Architect, a series of installations and paintings inspired by my rediscovered designs, each one representing a moment of reclamation. The exhibition announcement went viral, not because it was about revenge, but because it was about resurrection. When the opening night arrived, the gallery was packed. Journalists, art lovers, architects, all buzzing about the mysterious story behind the artist who had returned after years of silence. As I stood in front of my largest piece, a 3D installation shaped like the lake house, I felt someone's presence beside me. It was Samuel Reeves, Daniel's lawyer. "Congratulations," he said warmly. "He would have wanted to see this," I smiled faintly. "I think he already does," he nodded. Before he died, Daniel made one last donation, an anonymous one, to a women's foundation that funds female architects. He said it was for you. For women like you. My throat tightened. He really did change at the end, didn't he? "Sometimes," Samuel said gently, "the dying find clarity that the living never do." That night, after everyone left, I stood alone in the gallery, surrounded by my art, my story, my truth. I whispered into the stillness. "You took everything from me, Daniel. But in the end, you gave me back myself. And for the first time, I didn't cry." I smiled, because this time the ending wasn't his, it was mine. Success. It's strange how it doesn't always feel the way you imagined. A month after the Forgotten Architect exhibition, my name began appearing in architecture magazines, podcasts, even business columns. People were calling me the woman who rose from the ashes. Sponsors wanted collaborations, universities requested guest lectures, and galleries wanted a second showcase. But with every article written about me, Daniel's name followed too. The late Daniel Hart's widow reclaims her legacy. It was as though I could never truly step out of his shadow, even when I was standing on my own light. I tried to focus on work. Yet deep down, a quiet unease began to grow, like the faint hum of a storm far away. One evening, I was working late in my studio when someone knocked on the glass door. A man in a dark coat stood outside, tall, maybe in his 40s, sharp eyes that didn't blink much. He had that corporate stiffness that made my stomach twist with unease. I opened the door slightly. "Can I help you? Elena Hart?" His tone was polite but cold. "Yes." He extended a card. "Marcus Vale, Hart Enterprises." I froze. "Hart Enterprises?" "Yes," he said, stepping inside. "I'm the interim CEO. Daniel and I were partners for nearly a decade." I swallowed hard. "I thought the company shut down." "Temporarily," he said with a small smile that didn't reach his eyes. "We're restructuring. Daniel left a few loose ends, some of which involve you." I crossed my arms. "I don't see how that's any of my concern anymore." He took a slow step closer, his eyes scanning the blueprints on my table. "You'd be surprised, Mrs. Hart. Some of Daniel's contracts, the ones tied to your early designs, still have your name attached legally. Which means, technically, part of the company's new intellectual property belongs to you." I frowned. "That's impossible. I gave up all claim years ago." He smiled wider. "Not all of them. Daniel never finalized the transfer. We discovered documents in the archives. Designs that are now being revived for a luxury project, and they're registered under your signature." My pulse quickened. "So what do you want?" "To make a deal," he said simply. "Sign over the remaining rights to us, and we'll ensure you're compensated generously. Or," his voice lowered, "we can settle this in court. And trust me, that would be messy for both of us." The arrogance in his tone made my blood boil. "You're threatening me? I'm offering you a solution." I stared at him for a moment, then said coldly, "Get out." He smirked. "Think about it. I'll give you a week." As he left, I felt the old fire rise in my chest, the one I thought I'd buried with Daniel's memory. Hart Enterprises wanted to erase me again, not this time. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words, "Your name is still attached legally." I grabbed my laptop and started searching. The company's new project, called Aurora Estates, had just been announced. a massive architectural development on the coast, supposedly inspired by Daniel Hart's final vision. But as I scrolled through the concept images, my heart nearly stopped. The designs were mine. The same blueprints I'd created years ago, curves, angles, even the layout. It was unmistakable. They had taken my work, stripped my name, and rebranded it under Daniel's legacy again. For a few seconds, I couldn't breathe. Rage, betrayal, disbelief, they all collided inside me like a storm. I grabbed my phone and called Samuel Reeves, Daniel's lawyer. He answered, groggy but alert. "Samuel, it's Elena. I need your help. Right now." By the next morning, I was sitting in his office again, this time with a folder full of printed blueprints. Samuel adjusted his glasses as he studied the images. "You're right," he said finally. "These are definitely yours. But if they were never properly registered under your business, reclaiming ownership could be complicated." "Complicated or not, they're mine," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. He nodded. "I'll start digging into the legal archives. We'll find out exactly how they got these designs." As I left his office, I felt something inside me harden. For years, I had been the silent one, the forgiving one, the broken one, but not anymore. This wasn't just about justice. This was about reclaiming my voice. 3 days later, Samuel called. His tone was serious. "Elena, I've gone through Daniel's old files. There's something you need to see. Immediately." When I arrived, he handed me a folder labeled Confidential, Hart Enterprises Internal Records. Inside were copies of emails, between Daniel and Marcus Vale. I scanned through them quickly, my hands trembling. One message stood out. From Marcus Vale to Daniel Hart subject. "Elena's designs. We should remove her signature from the blueprints before filing the patents. She'll never notice, and if she does, she won't have the resources to fight us." Another email, dated 2 weeks before Daniel's death. From Daniel Hart to Marcus Vale don't. Not this time. "She deserves credit. If you do this behind my back, I'll end our partnership permanently," I gasped. Daniel had tried to stop him. Samuel looked at me. "It seems Marcus continued the project after Daniel's death, using your designs illegally. And he's trying to erase all evidence of your authorship." I clenched my fists. "Then I'm taking him down." Over the next week, I worked day and night gathering evidence. Every sketch, every signature, every contract that could prove my ownership. Samuel filed an injunction against Hart Enterprises, halting the Aurora Estates project until further review. But Marcus wasn't going to surrender quietly. He began attacking me publicly. Interviews, online articles, insinuations that I was exploiting Daniel's memory for fame. Social media buzzed with mixed opinions. Some called me a fraud, others defended me fiercely. My inbox filled with hate mail and threats. Yet through it all, I stayed silent, calm, determined, because I had one final move to make. The night before the court hearing, I received an email from an anonymous address. Subject: "You don't know everything about Daniel." There was a video attachment. Against my better judgment, I clicked it. The footage showed Daniel, sitting in his office, speaking to someone behind the camera. "Marcus," he said, "I've told you we can't keep using her work like this." "She'll find out." A pause. Then Daniel continued, voice firm. "If something happens to me, this recording goes straight to Samuel Reeves. I want her to have full ownership of everything tied to those designs." The clip ended abruptly. I sat frozen. Daniel had known. He'd tried to protect me. For years I'd thought of him as the villain, and maybe he had been one. But in the end, he had tried to make things right, and now, it was my turn to finish what he started. The next morning, the courtroom buzzed with reporters. Marcus sat across the aisle, calm and smug, his lawyers whispering confidently. When it was my turn to speak, I stood tall, voice steady. "I'm not here for revenge," I said. "I'm here for truth. My husband's company stole my work. My name, my legacy. But I'm not asking for sympathy. I'm asking for recognition." Then, I handed the judge the flash drive with Daniel's video. The silence that followed after it played was deafening. Marcus's face turned pale. His lawyer dropped his pen. The judge leaned forward. Mrs. Hart, I believe this evidence is quite decisive. The intellectual property rights to the Aurora Estates project are hereby awarded to you. I exhaled deeply. The courtroom blurred as relief washed over me. It was done. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed and microphones surrounded me. Mrs. Hart, how does it feel to win? Someone shouted. I smiled faintly. It's not a victory, I said softly. It's justice. And sometimes justice doesn't shout, it whispers. Then I walked away, the autumn wind brushing past my face, carrying with it the last remnants of my past. This was no longer Daniel's story. It was mine, rewritten, reclaimed, reborn. After the court ruling, the world around me changed in ways I hadn't expected. Reporters called it the justice of the forgotten wife. Social media turned my story into headlines. Elena Hart reclaims her legacy. The woman who outsmarted Hart Enterprises, and countless others. Everywhere I went, people wanted my voice, my story, my resilience, but fame isn't healing. Recognition doesn't erase scars. Some nights, I'd still wake up from dreams of Daniel's voice calling my name. In others, I'd see Marcus's face twisted in rage as the judge read the verdict. The more the world celebrated me, the quieter I became inside, because behind every act of justice, there's still loss. A week after the trial, I received an unexpected call. It was from Emily, my former assistant at Hart Enterprises, one of the few who had always been kind to me. Elena, she said hesitantly, you might want to know. Marcus hasn't been seen at the office since the verdict. He's not doing well. I stayed silent. He lost everything, she continued softly. His reputation, his investors, his position. He's selling his house. I thanked her for telling me and hung up. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring out the window at the pale morning sky. A part of me felt relief. Another part felt something else entirely. Was this what victory was supposed to feel like? 3 days later, I found myself driving toward the old Hart Enterprises building, the one Daniel had built when everything was new and full of promise. The parking lot was half empty. The glass facade reflected the gray sky, cracked and stained from years of neglect. And then I saw him. Marcus stood by the entrance, smoking, his posture hunched, his face tired. He looked nothing like the arrogant man who once walked into my studio threatening lawsuits. When he noticed me, he froze, then gave a hollow laugh. Come to see the ruins, Mrs. Hart? I stepped closer. I didn't know you were still here, he shrugged. Packing up what's left of the empire. Feels poetic, doesn't it? There was a bitter edge to his voice, but underneath it, exhaustion. You knew it would end like this, I said quietly. I thought I could win, he admitted. That's what Daniel and I always believed. That success was about power, ownership, legacy. He looked up at the cracked company logo. But you proved us both wrong. I didn't respond. He dropped his cigarette, crushed it beneath his shoe, and said, You could have destroyed me completely. You had enough evidence to put me in prison for fraud. But you didn't, I met his eyes. Because I didn't need to. You did that to yourself. He gave a slow, humorless smile. You sound like Daniel. I blinked, taken aback. Daniel? He nodded. Before he died, he said something to me I never forgot. He told me, one day you'll realize you were never fighting her. You were fighting your own greed. He looked away, eyes glassy. I didn't understand it then. I do now. For a moment, there was only silence between us, the kind that comes not from hatred, but from recognition. Then Marcus said, almost to himself, You know, Elena, he loved you. Even after everything, he just didn't know how to show it without trying to control it. I swallowed hard, my chest tightening. That doesn't change what he did. No, Marcus said softly. But maybe it changes what you carry from it. He turned to walk away, hands buried in his coat pockets. Goodbye, Mrs. Hart. I watched him go, the cold wind swirling around us, carrying away the ashes of everything we once were. That night, I sat at my desk, the city lights flickering through the glass wall of my studio. The world outside moved on, unaware of the storm that had passed through this woman's life. In front of me lay two things, a framed photo of Daniel, and a small faded blueprint, the very first design I had ever drawn for our dream home. I ran my fingers over the lines. Back then, every stroke had been full of hope. I realized I didn't hate Daniel anymore. I pitied him. for what he'd lost, for what he'd feared, for how blind ambition had stolen the very love he wanted to preserve. He had been my betrayer, my teacher, and somehow still, my story's beginning. Weeks passed. The Aurora Estates project was relaunched under my name, now officially the Hart Foundation for Sustainable Design. Instead of a luxury estate for billionaires, I turned it into a community-driven project that offered eco-homes for low-income families. It was the kind of project Daniel would have never approved, and yet, I think part of him would have admired it too. During the opening ceremony, a reporter asked, "Mrs. Hart, what drives you now?" I smiled gently and said, "Redemption." Not revenge. The crowd applauded, cameras flashed, and I felt something deep within me finally let go, as if the ghosts of the past were slowly fading into light. That night, I drove to the sea. It was where Daniel and I had once dreamed of building a home, before everything fell apart. The waves crashed softly against the rocks, the air carrying a whisper of salt and memory. I closed my eyes and spoke quietly, to no one, and to him at once. "You were wrong, Daniel. Success wasn't about legacy. It was about peace. And I've finally found it." A tear slipped down my cheek, not from pain, but from release. Then I took the blueprint from my bag, folded it neatly, and let the wind carry it out over the water. For the first time in years, I didn't feel empty. I felt free. As I turned to leave, I noticed someone standing at a distance, a young woman with a camera. She smiled shyly. "Mrs. Hart? I'm sorry to disturb you. I'm an architecture student. You inspired me to apply for design school. Your story, it made me believe I could make something beautiful again." Her voice trembled slightly, and I saw a familiar fire in her eyes, the same one I once had when the world still felt possible. I smiled warmly. "Then promise me something," I said. She nodded eagerly. "Never let anyone tell your story for you." She grinned, teary-eyed, and walked away into the fading light. As the waves rolled against the shore, I felt Daniel's memory finally settle, not as a wound, but as a whisper in the wind. The past didn't need to be erased anymore. It had shaped me, sharpened me, and taught me the hardest truth of all. Sometimes, justice isn't about winning. It's about choosing to let go. Some stories aren't about revenge. They're about remembering who you were before the world told you to forget.